You know, God's been so wonderful.
Good morning. Welcome to the Spirit of the Light Church lesson on patriarchs, prophets, priests, judges, and heroes of the Old Testament, leading to the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Currently, we are learning about the patriarchs that are part of the covenant and the ancestral line of Jesus Christ. We started with Adam and Noah, Abraham, and now we are on our lesson about David, the first king who united Israel. And then there's Jesus to come, the lesson on him. Last week at the end of our lesson, the panel members gave some very key points that I think are profound and would like to share with you today. As you know, those of you who were with us last week, we discussed how Joab and Asahel broke ranks and undermined it and underdetermined who David was as the king and his authority. The key points: when God anoints you to do something, not everyone will recognize it, and those who do may reject you. Minister Douglas McCrory said, even David's brothers couldn't recognize him as the future king. And I hadn't really thought about that, and that's a very good point, because when David went to take his brothers some food on the battlefield, they chastised him and said he was being nosy. But part of that visit, he threw down and destroyed Goliath. And then his cousins, Joab and Asahel, did know who he was, and they still disobeyed him. And Douglas concluded his statement by saying, but God made him the leader. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Douglas?
No, your summation was quite sufficient.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for those profound words. And then my sister Gloria, she gave a wonderful prayer, and we talked about how God made David king because of his heart, not his size, not his strength, not his looks or financial holdings. He made him king because of his heart. And then she gave a beautiful, endearing prayer that called it a heart condition. She asked God to give us the right heart condition, and that is a heart like David's to serve. And if you have the right heart condition, you will see and receive the Holy Spirit, anointed people around you, and you will receive your own. Okay, Gloria, would you like to add something to that?
No, I think that was perfectly surmised, as my brother says.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing those words, and I look forward to more from both of you in the future. In your pictures, you look so nice. You're famous. Look at my brother. Oh my God. She's gone. We lost her. Oh, okay. Back to the lesson. Well, I still have some credibility. Oh, David became king peaceably. We know that from previous lessons. He was a servant leader. So he peaceably became king, but must battle the enemies of Israel to become a true king, to become Lord of the promised land. And that is what this lesson will be about today. So after the Philistine war, when Saul and his sons were killed near Mount Gilboa, the Philistines gained control over a significant amount of territory. 1 Samuel 31st and 1 Chronicles 10. Now, we remember from last week, the cities were abandoned. Everybody beat feet when they saw that and heard that the Israelite army had been overthrown. And particularly, the scriptures mention that the valley of Jezreel and the opposite side of it on the Jordan River could actually see what was going on. So they controlled now, the Philistines, the strategic towns in the north and the central highlands, effectively pushing Israel's borders back and cutting off tribes from the north to the rest of the nation. So they have geographically divided Israel. And so if you look at the drawing, you see that to your left, sorry, what's going on here? Okay, to your left, there is the land that the Philistines already occupied. And then after they overthrew Saul's army, they cut off the north and south here near the valley of Jezreel. But Ishbosheth, as we know, he regained some of the land on through Abner, his commander. And so now the west side of Manasseh is now open and the trade routes have been opened. But there's still problems. We have the Armenians, the Ammons, the Moabites, the Edomites, the Amalekites, and Ammon is the name of the tribe leader, the son of Lot, but they're actually called Ammonites in some circles. So they're still surrounded by these other people that are not part of the promised land through Joshua, through Jacob. Some of the promised lands we know was promised to Abraham, which was a larger parchment, and that included all of his descendants. But the Armenians, the Ammonites, and the Moabites are not from the line of Abraham. The Armenians are from the line of Japheth, which is the son of Noah. He was the neutral son who's supposed to be under the tents of Shem. Then we have the Ammonites, who are part of Lot's. There's Lot's sons, Ammon and Moab were his sons. And then we have the Edomites, which were Esau, and the Amalekites, which are Esau and Ishmael. And Ishmael and Esau were the sons of Abraham. But they became enemies. And we're going to see next few lessons how David conquered these lands, conquered his enemies to complete the areas of the promised land that was promised to Abraham. The promises that were made to Jacob and the 12 tribes of Israel through Moses were met, but not the complete promise that was given to Abraham. And that will be fulfilled under the reign of King David. Okay. So, made king in peace, but preparing for war. If you recall last week, the tribes all selected David as king. There was no war. Ishbosheth was killed by certain men, and David killed them. And Abner switched sides to be on David's side. And then Joab killed him for killing his brother. The following slides show tribe by tribe the list, as in 1 Chronicles 12th chapter, showing how many soldiers each group brought to David at Hebron to make him king over all of Israel. The total number of soldiers that came to David were 340,000 men. Here's the chart. And I want to call to your attention that the least amount of men were given were the Benjamites. And the Benjamites, as you will see later, they were the ones who were occupied by other countries like the Jebusites, and they were impacted, you may recall from the map, by the war between Israel and the Philistines. So they were occupied. So they didn't really have a lot to give. And the largest amount was from Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, and those were the tribes who asked to settle on the opposite side of the Jordan River towards the west, and everyone else settled on the east. So they had more, and they contributed more, and they were also subject to more hostilities. But everyone gave, even the tribe of Levi, who did not occupy land. So there were 13 different tribes that contributed because Joseph's children, as we know from previous lessons, Ephraim and Manasseh, got a double blessing of the promised land. So it's the 12 tribes that had land plus the Levites. So everyone came together united under one umbrella. All these were fighting men who volunteered to serve in the ranks and came to Hebron fully determined to make David king over Israel. All the rest of Israelites were also of one mind to make David king. The men spent 3 days there with David eating and drinking, for the families had supplied provisions for them. Also, their neighbors from as far away as Issachar, Zebulun, and Naphtali came bringing food on donkeys, camels, mules, and oxen. There were plentiful supplies of flour, figs, raisin cakes, wine, olive oil, cattle, sheep, for there was joy in Israel. And this is in 1 Chronicles 12th chapter. If you'd like to find more details on this topic. So, David's men of war. He had 3 elite guards. They were the top warriors and had the highest honor. Josheb-Basshebeth, he killed 800 men in one encounter with his spear. Eleazar fought the Philistines when the Israel's troops retreated. His hand clung to his sword after the battle from the fight so hard. And then there's Shammah. He defended a field of lentils against the Philistines single-handedly, striking them down while the Lord brought victory. The 3 of the 30 once broke through the Philistine lines. These are 3 different men to bring David water from the Bethlehem well. He said, "Oh, if I could just drink from the well." So these 3 men, they broke in behind enemy lines, got David the water, and brought it back to David. David poured it out as an offering to God, saying it was too precious to drink since it represented their risk of life. Abishai, brother of Joab, commander of the 30, killed 300 men with his spear and became as famous as the 3 mighty elite warriors, though not counted among them. So here's kind of a summary. So you have your 3 mighty warriors. You have the 3 men that brought water from Bethlehem. You have Abishai, the brother of Joab, who was a great warrior. And then we have Ben-Ani, who killed Egyptians with his own sword and fought a lion with his bare hands. And then there are the 30 fighters, mighty fighters. And we see Asahel, Joab's brother, who was killed by Abner, who was part of the 30, but no longer is on the list because he's now dead. So the takeaway here is they prepared for war. David had mighty warriors that weren't just skilled fighters. They were deeply loyal, willing to risk their lives for their king. Their victories are often described as both courageous acts and evidence of God's help. They were anointed warriors by God who had supernatural power to do supernatural things according to God's will. So not only was David anointed, so was his fighters. They were anointed to fight. David was anointed to lead and fight. So now they are prepared for war and victory because they have God on their side. David has the men. He has the weapons that were brought by Manasseh and others. He has supplies that were brought by certain tribes. And he has leadership and strategy. So we're going to learn later on today about the strategy. God has equipped and prepared David for this victory. God led him with his strategy. The men fought alongside him. He had weapons to fight and supplies for nourishment, medicine, and sacrifices to God, not just for eating. So now we're here at our story. David marches to take Jerusalem from the Jebusites, who mocked him, saying, "Even the blind and the lame can defend it." Now, the Jebusites have been living in their land for centuries. They didn't just occupy it after the war. because Jerusalem had a very, very tight stronghold. It was built high on a plateau beneath a valley. It was very difficult to penetrate, and so they were never able to really take this over and control it after the time of Hezekiah and some of the other great kings. So they had been there for a long time. But I guess they didn't know or forgot Hezekiah during his reign. He built this enormous aqueduct because Jerusalem was having a water supply problem. So he solved their problem. So Jerusalem has plenty of water. It has plenty of food, and now it also has the natural barriers, but it also links the north and the south because it has roads that go between the north and the south, and it's kind of the central point. And it is also the spiritual capital, Jerusalem, considered the holy place of the Jews. And we know about that and the arguments with the Samaritans, but has a dual purpose. So this is what David wants, and he realizes to be king, he has to take Jerusalem. And that's the first thing he goes for, and that shows strategy, wisdom, and spiritual inclination. David had said, whoever leads the attack to the Jebusites will become commander in chief. Joab, son of Uriah, went up first, and so he received the command. So now Joab's in charge again. He captures the city, and on that day, David had said, anyone who conquers the Jebusites will have to use the water shaft to reach those lame and blind, who David considered his enemy, because that's what they were said. Only even the lame and blind can defend it. So now you're called lame and blind, or blind and lame. And so that is why he said, the blind and lame will not enter the palace. David makes it a capital, calling it the city of David. David builds up the fortress and becomes more and more powerful because the Lord is with him. So Hiram, he's pretty smart. He's the king of Tyre. He's a powerful king of the Phoenician ruler, and he sent materials and craftsmen to help David build a palace. David recognizes that God has established his kingdom for the sake of his people Israel. First Chronicle 29th chapter describes how leaders of the tribes of Israel contributed offerings for the temple. So everyone's contributing, including Hiram. So David prepares extensively for the temple, though Solomon builds it. After he left Hebron, David took more concubines and wives in Jerusalem, and more sons and daughters were born to him. He had 11 sons. The significance of Hiram's collaboration represents one of the earliest recorded instances of international cooperation in a large-scale building project. It also highlights the economics and cultural influence of Tyre and the Phoenicians in ancient Near East. So I'm saying not only that, it shows that the Phoenicians recognized David as an anointed king, and it's better to get along than to fight. And I have at the bottom, the Phoenicians are descendants of Mizraim, who was the brother of Canaan, not Canaan the cursed one. And they are both the grandsons of Noah. David's reign was not one of peace, it was full of bloodshed. Therefore, God told Solomon to build his temple. And although David sought peace, his kingdom came through wars and bloodshed. It was justified in most cases, and there was violence. Therefore, God told David that Solomon would build the temple, and later he defiled it with idol worship. So the edict came, God's judgment on Solomon. So the Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned from the Lord of Israel. Therefore the Lord said to Solomon, because you have done this, I will surely tear the kingdom away from you and give it to your servant. Nonetheless, I will not do it in your days, for the sake of your father David. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. However, I will not tear away the whole kingdom. I will give one tribe to your son for the sake of my servant David. And as we know, it is Judah. The kingdom will be divided, 10 tribes on the north, and the Benjamites and Judeans on the south, and they formed to call the nation of Judah, which remained to the time of Jesus. And then some, of course. The Philistines attack when they hear that David has been made king. David asks God for guidance and defeats them twice. First at Baal Perazim, and secondly, in 2 Samuel's 5th chapter, he states that David defeated the Philistines at Baal Perazim, Perazim, and said, the Lord has broken through my enemies before me like a breaking flood. He then named the place Baal Perazim, and the verse emphasizes God's power and David's recognition of it in his victory. He always gave honor to God. Once more, the Philistines came up with the spread out in the valley of the Rephaim. So David inquired of the Lord, and he answered, do not go straight up, but circle behind them and attack them in the front of the poplar trees. So this is attack number 2. As soon as you hear the sound of marching on the top of the trees and from the poplar trees, move quickly, because that will mean that the Lord has gone out in front of you to strike the Philistine army. So David did as the Lord commanded him, and he struck down the Philistines all the way from Gibeon to Gazer. God's presence and favor are clearly with David. Okay. Here we are on the map. That's Baal Perazim is where the dot is, showing where the red arrow is. And this Gibeon and Gazer, where David drove them back. Also, there is Jerusalem there. So all of this is consecrated, all this fighting near the lands of Benjamin. So he's pretty stressed and thinned out. Okay. So what did God say? What was his instructions? He said, do not go straight up. This is the second time, not the first. He switched the game on them. Circle around behind them. Wait near the poplar trees. Wait for me. Attack behind them. So this time he's attacking them from behind. So modern application. How do we apply David's strategy to leadership today? Don't assume yesterday's plan will work today. In conflict, do not move forward if God says wait. In prayer, circle around, patient and listening. Follow God into victory and clarity. David's strategy, a model for us. He asked, he listened. That's something we don't do often enough. He obeyed and he won. Strategy isn't just tactical, charge, it's spiritual. You have to have both if you are a godly leader. So we're talking about lions in leadership, godly lessons and tactical strategy. It was no mistake that Jesus is called the Lion of Judah. Surround and conquer strategic position. Let's look at the lion's behavior. Lions circle their prey like David did to position themselves for the ambush. The leadership lesson here is that great leaders don't blindly charge. They position people and resources before taking actions. Think before you do something. The tactic is don't always attack problems head on. Flank them with insight from the Spirit, preparation including fasting and prayer, and perspective from God. Biblical parallel. David circled behind the Philistines at the God's command. The Philistines at God's command. Oh boy, tongue twister. Study the field, know your target. Lion behavior. Lions assess the herd, looking for the weakest point before they attack. David circled and attacked the Philistines from behind. He was also underestimated by the Jebusites. He used an unconventional entry there. He went through the water shaft. The leadership lesson is before taking on a challenge, gather intelligence. Know the weaknesses of the situation, not just the strengths of your team. Pick your battles wisely. Do not fight everything. Fight what matters. Say again, fight what matters. Number 3, move as a team. Coordination wins. The lion's behavior, the pride works together. Some lions drive, others ambush. Leadership lesson. Victory comes from unity in roles. Teams that know when to lead, support, execute will win more often. We were talking about this after our lesson on Sunday about how we're a team and how teams work together and how we all have our own gifting and own tasks, own functions, but we all come together for the same purpose, which is to meet the will of God. And that is the only way it should be done. That is the way the church was set up. And that is very key and important to any leadership strategy anyone has to have is teamwork. Because no man stands alone. Tactic. Define your team's role clearly. Every team member has to understand what they're supposed to do and act in sync and not against one another. And as we know with David's warriors and army, there were anointed people within them, anointed to go to battle and fight and to do supernatural things that we could not do without God. David not only had his warriors, he had his man from God, he had his prophet, he had Nathan, and he had a team. He had his Levite priests. So he didn't do all of this alone. God sent him help. And the big one, patience before power. Patience before power. Wait for the moment. There we go. Lion behavior. Lions don't rush. They wait for the perfect time to strike. The leadership lesson here is timing is everything. Don't mistake actions for effectiveness. Wait until it's your moment. And your moment needs to be God's moment. So wait until it's God's moment. Tactic. Like David waited for the sound in the trees, as God told him to, before moving. Wise leaders wait for the signal from God. David didn't expect the same strategy to work twice. He inquired of the Lord again. God gave David new instructions. Sometimes God is going to tell you to hit the enemy in the head, and sometimes it will be in the back of their heads. You just need to listen and obey because we don't attack the enemy the same way each time. Each situation is different, and each response needs to be God ordained. Coming closely to the conclusion of my lesson for today, I'm going to tie it in why we learned about the king of the jungle. Well, God made the lions, God made nature, and God chose to refer to his leaders as lions. Don't think they're weak, they're smart and strategic. They follow the Lord. The lion is king of the jungle. Because, why is he king? Not just because he can roar real loud, he is powerful. And not only is he powerful, he looks and behaves regal. Easy to identify as the boss. Everybody knows what the lion looks like. Not one cat alive other than the lion looks like him. The Black Panther, the tiger, none of them have the beautiful mane that God made for him. He is a mighty hunter and warrior. His pride follows him. He is a smart leader. He thinks strategically and tactically. God made David this way. He was named Son of Judah, from the tribe of Judah, the lion's cub, and Jesus was named the Lion of Judah. So when you hear the word lion, don't think of brute force, think of cunning, think of intelligence, think of power, think of patience, all of those things that make a leader a good leader. And here are the scriptures where you can find these names. I didn't make them up. Judah, the lion cub, is in Genesis chapter 49. David, the son of Judah, is in Matthew's first chapter. And Jesus, the Lion of Judah, is in Revelations. Also, here's another perspective. John and Ezekiel both saw the angels and creatures with these four faces. They have the eagle, which is blue in the temple, representative of the blue curtains in the temple, which means there was the deity. And this is one of the four faces of Jesus, the Lion of Judah. There was the ox, who was for servitude, sacrifice, and atonement, and the color in the temple was red on the curtains. Then there was man, the priesthood, purity and righteousness. The curtain was colored white. And then there's the lion of royalty, which is purple. So you cannot discount that our God is not only smart and strategic, he is powerful, he is easy to identify, he is followed, and he is also feared. Next week, we will talk about strategic leadership generally, and then we will apply it to David. And I'm not talking about strategic leadership in professional terms. I'm talking to faith followers and strategic leadership following God. And after that, we will talk about transformational leadership the following week, because David had many leadership qualities. He was a servant leader first, and he could not be strategic unless he had the right purpose and that he was willing to serve God and his people, which gives you the purpose, and then the strategy fills the purpose. And so we're going to talk about David's strategy, and then we're going to talk about how he used it and led it to transform the nation of Israel into a united group under God for his service. I'm going to turn over now to the panel, and then after that, it'll be Pastor. If any closing words he might want to share with us, we will hear them, and prayer from our dear sister, Gloria Houston. Panel. All right, Doug, I knew you wouldn't let me down. Bring it on.
You're on mute, Doug.
I've been studying military tactics for a long time, and what I find extraordinary is you fight battle after battle, and it seems to be almost mundane. This is going to work, and that's going to work, and everybody knows what everybody's going to do. And so, how do you outthink the opposition? How do you do that? Well, in modern times, we call it intelligence. Okay. We gather as much resources and information and intelligence as you can. David realized the most valuable resource for the intelligence for success was God. And I believe he has never stopped giving those gifts to us in many, many battles. Okay. These three men that you mentioned that were loyal to David realized they were loyal to God. And through them, they did extraordinary things. Okay. And so, again, I say, and I've said before, find your place. Find out what God wants you to do. You will be successful, and it will be something extraordinary. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. Very, very profound.
You know, God's been so wonderful.